Hey, I'm Caleb with You Can Make This Too, and I'm making a huge raised garden bed for my mother-in-law. If you're interested in plans and a shopping list for this project, there will be a link below as well as the information for my Patreon contest prize for this month. Anyway, stick with me and I'll show you how you can make this too.
Getting an outdoor structure like this to come out square takes a very different approach than the projects I normally do. I started by making a triangle with 3 stakes connected by string that was 6, 8, and 10 feet. Basically a double-sized 3-4-5 triangle. The theory was that by staking that out with the lines tight, I would have a right triangle with a square corner. Then I pulled measurements along the legs of those triangles that were the size of the garden, 16 feet and 10 feet. I did some math on the calculator that's always in my pocket. My math teacher didn't see that one coming. And the corner-to-corner length was correct. Then I could fish for the last corner. I just kept moving my stake until the measurement was right from the other 3 stakes. Now I have the location for the 4 corner posts. I pulled tape between the 2 front posts and marked where all of the other front posts will be, then marked the location for the center post for the back wall. I ran string all the way around the perimeter to follow with some marking paint. What I forgot to do in all this was place some batter boards, which are stakes beyond the perimeter that I could later pull string across to see the corners and the whole perimeter. It's a bit hard to see, but everywhere a post goes, I made a perpendicular line. With all the posts marked out, it's time to start digging the holes. Fortunately, the only thing I needed to do by hand was remove the sod. My mother-in-law's boyfriend brought his small tractor with an auger over and drilled out the holes. That saved a whole lot of labor. If you rent an auger to do something like this, make sure to remove the sod because otherwise it'll clog up the auger and they just don't cut as well. It started raining, so I didn't get much footage of setting the posts. It's pretty repetitive and simple though. Put a post in the hole, make sure that it's in the right place, add concrete, nail some bracing so it's level, and move on. This is where putting out those batter boards earlier would have helped. I could have pulled a string from those and used that to get everything in line. I'm sure some of you are noticing that I didn't mix the concrete. According to Quikrete, that's just fine. So long as you add water afterwards, everything will cure, and that's what I did off camera. I didn't forget the water. I don't have an awesome spinning laser to give me a level line, so I pulled string and used line levels to mark level-ish lines. The ground elevation in this spot changed more than I thought. I should have measured that. It turns out there was about a 12-inch difference across the garden. I wanted the top of the beds to be level, but I had 2 constraints. I didn't want to excavate a bunch of dirt from where the ground was higher to make it flat, and the height of the post in the lowest corner. If that post had been taller, I would have just raised the height of the beds on that side, but it wasn't. So in lieu of ripping out that post and buying a longer one and resetting it, we decided the top of the beds would split the difference between the ground and what was actually level. Enough of that, more building. With the bed height marked, I started adding cleats to the posts. These are nailed to the post with ring shank galvanized nails. These are what I'll attach the bed sides to. Because the line I have for the bed is the top of it, I'm going to start at the top and work my way down, setting boards in place. My first tip on this is get a friend to help. But if, like me, you don't have friends, then you can drive a temporary screw into the post to hold it in place. That let me go screw in the other side, then come back and cut the board to length and screw it in place. Moral of the story, friends are best, but if you've at least got a good screw, you're going to be alright. When I got to the bottom board, the ground kind of got in the way in some places. So I just dug it out a bit and then set that board in place. And so it goes like that all the way around the perimeter, except for where the doors will be. I added some 2x4s to the outside of the wall as reinforcement and also kind of dress everything up. Setting the interior walls of the garden beds was a little tougher. I screwed a temporary support into the end of the board to help hold it up, kind of like that good screw earlier, while I screwed it to the post and then re-screwed it into the support where it was level. Then I added some bracing across the top of everything to get the spacing from the outside wall correct. The rest of the boards went pretty quick. and then the temporary support could be replaced with a permanent one that will tie into the next wall. I learned a bit from the first one, so when I did the other side, I set up the bracing first, and I even had some screws preset to hold the board so I wouldn't be fumbling with starting screws, and this went faster. Adding the third wall was really quick. I just screwed it into the end post of the short walls, and that's how far I made it on my first trip to work on this. Building the center square garden was pretty similar to the other interior wall, but a lot easier because they're shorter. Before moving any further, I'm at a point where I can flush cut everything that I left long earlier, and the reciprocating saw made really quick work of that. The cap for the bed sides is just a 2x4 that gets screwed down, and there's really not anything else to say about it. It's time to move to the top. I'm going to call these pieces the top rail. I use quick clamps to hold it up and then toenail screws into it to hold it in place. These will support the top plate and give me something to secure the fencing to. With the top rail in place, I know how tall the posts need to be, and now I can trim them to length, and again, the Sawzall is perfect for this. Now for what I'm calling the top plate. It's hard to measure the distance because the mitered corners are going to stick out past the posts, so I mitered one side and marked it in place. Then once that piece is cut, I screw it into place and repeat that around the top. The last pieces to go on, I messed up. My mother-in-law wants bird netting on the top, and these are the pieces that will support that. I actually meant for the angle to be the other way, but I accidentally cut these too short and didn't have time to get more longer, and she said she liked it this way better, so onward I went. The last thing I finished on my second trip was getting everything sealed. My airless sprayer made pretty quick work of that. My last trip, there's not much left to do. Between trips, my mother-in-law lined the sides of the beds with plastic, brought in gravel for the walkway and to fill some of the bottom of the beds, because these are deeper than they need to be, and filled the rest of the beds with raised garden mix. I started with the fence around the top. Fortunately, this stuff cuts pretty easy with wire cutters because I forgot to bring my angle grinder. Then I just laid the cut pieces into place and hammered fence staples in to hold it all in place. The other big project for the last trip is getting the doors made and hung. I cut my pieces to length with the circular saw, which I've done for the whole project, and lay them out. I'm using hardware to assemble the doors and help keep them from sagging. They don't really hold things very tight though, so I also toe-nailed some long screws into the joints to really pull it together. Then I added the decking on the back of the door so they have some depth. I'm only putting a screw in the middle so that way the boards can move with the weather. After some paint, I add some fencing to the door. These doors will be pushed open from the inside, so that's why I installed the decking inside the frame the way I did, and also went with a tighter wire. I think that will help these stand up better to being pushed, kicked, and bumped open. Now the doors just need to be hung. I install 3 hinges on each door, those annoying garden gate latch things, so the doors will stay shut, and a pull handle on the outside for easier opening. The downside of the garden latches is they can lock you inside, so I hook a chain onto them, run it over the top plate, and hooked it to a screw eye inside of the garden. This provides a way to open the latch from the inside. The last thing is adding the bird netting on top. There's not really anything special. I just unrolled it and used one of those staplers that gives you really bad hand cramps to staple all of the netting in place and then cut off the excess. And with that, this thing just needs some plants. If you're interested in building something like this, don't forget that I have plans as well as a shopping list available for you on my website that'll help you get started. Anyway, I hope you learned something or were at least entertained. Until next time, make time to make something.